This is how I paint my Grimdark Death Guard in a quick, easy and fun way using no oil paints, and it's beginner friendly. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to zenithal highlight the models. What I've used here is Chaos Black, and I've dusted it over with some Corax White. This is very, very important, and it's going to help us get that desired effect at the end. Now, what paints am I going to be using throughout this? Now, I personally don't use very many Games Workshop paints, but there's absolutely no reason why you can't look at these colours and substitute in Games Workshop paint. So I'm going to tell you what paints I use, because I think that one, they're cheaper than GW, and two, they're as good if not better. So the first paints that we're going to look at and what we're going to be using, very, very important, are washes. Now, the washes that I'll be using in this are going to be Army Painter Flesh Wash, Army Painter Red, Army Painter Green, potentially for a change which we'll come to at the end for that. And also, speaking about GW, I'm actually going to be using some Agrax Earthshade in this as well. The next set of colours that we're going to be using are going to be our Fluorescents. Now, I like to use either Vallejo or also AK. I think AK might have the edge on Vallejo, but you didn't hear that from me. Other paints that we're going to be using are what we're going to be using to do the splatter effect. Now, what you're going to see me using here is a contrast red. Now, I am not a big fan of Games Workshop's contrast red. That's why I'm using it, because I didn't mind using a load of it and splatting it everywhere. But another paint that I used was Coat d'Arms Black. Really, these paints are going to be thinned down later, and we'll come to that. For the metallics, I use Coat d'Arms Bronze. And for another look, you could also use the Vallejo Bronze. Now, the Vallejo metallics are absolutely amazing. I cannot recommend them enough. Finally, for the basing, we're going to be using some dry pigments. I'm using Vallejo again. We're going to be using some crackle paint. I'm using green stuff crackle paint for this. And why bother buying expensive modelling acrylic when you could buy a big massive tube for the same? And we're going to be using this for grey later. So before we get started, this was recorded all live on Twitch, and I actually had COVID at the time. I painted this army in a week, and it was just like one evening per week, and they were done. It's very, very quick, very, very easy. So if you want to see some more hobby streams by me, why not check out my Twitch stream? The links are below. And also, thank you to all my Patreons. Right, step one, we've talked about the zenithal undercoat. Step two is the messiest and maybe the most fun. We are going to use, you can use a toothbrush. I've used a big brush here and a cocktail stick. And we're going to take some red and black, and we're going to splatter that very haphazardly all over the model. Depending on, you know, how speckled and how nasty you want the end model to be. At the end depends on how much sort of splatter you're going to add. I've used red because it kind of contrasts with the green, and it will look nice underneath the flesh tone that we're going to put on later. But really, go crazy. You could use any color for this. It really just depends what look you're going for. And that's stage one. Stage two, again, very, very simple, this kind of style of painting. We're going to go in and do the metallics, and then we're going to do any sort of greens or any secondary colors, really. So here I've chosen a sort of goblin green, sort of a luminous sort of color, and I'm going to paint that over all the bits that I think, you know, would suit. And I'm going to cover all of the trim with a metallic color. This now is where the magic happens. This is going to show you how easy and simple this process is. All I'm going to do now is mix a little bit of Army Painter Flesh Wash and a little bit of Agrax Earthshade. Now, I'm not showing you my exact measurements of how to do this, because you need to experiment. Every wash is different. Every paint is different. Everyone's situation is different. You're just going to have to sort of feel it and see what's best for you. I believe I watered this down a little bit as well, and I'm just going to splosh it over the whole model. Now look at that. It's almost already done, isn't it? I mean, don't you think that is almost magical? Now, you could say that the model is is battle ready now. I think that's battle ready. So we're just going to go in. Next step we're going to do is we're going to go and pick out some of those details, and we're going to add in some highlights. So we're going to pick out things like the bones and the horns. Now what I'm also doing is to add a little bit more of an element of almost gore and body horror, is we're going to add some of that red army painter flesh wash, and maybe even some blood for the blood god around the bottom of those horns, so it looks like they're sort of bursting out of their flesh. Anywhere that looks like it's got perhaps a pustule or something like that, we might want to add some yellow and then put a little bit of red wash around there to make it look nice and sore. Anywhere that's got flesh, again, we could use a flesh color, but why not cover that flesh color in a red wash as well? Again, adding to that sort of filthy, gorish feel. Next, I'm going to do some very minor highlights on the greens, maybe pick out some of the metals as well. Essentially, I'm just going in and re-adding in the base coat, and then with the greens, I'm just adding a little bit more of that fluorescent paint to make it stand out a little bit more. And I think you'd agree, this guy is looking almost done already. And really, a final step is we want them to look really menacing, and we need to give them some sort of brightness, right? So I think that for these guys, that a fluorescent pink works really, really well. So I'm just going to pick out the eyes and maybe some other choice points on the model. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to add some white, and then essentially I'm just going to slowly build up that pink, almost give it a sort of glowing effect. After the wash has gone on the metal, we might want to brighten it up just a little bit. So all I'm going to do is just reapply some of those bronze colours. And then for some of the other metallics, I might just go in and add just a lick of that Vallejo chrome. This Vallejo chrome, I think, is an amazing colour. Should be in everyone's arsenal. And finally, for the metals, we're going to go in, I mean, where they are Plague Marines, we've got to add some rust, really, haven't we? So perhaps we might add some blood, you know, maybe a little bit more of the, blood for the blood god, and then just a sort of dab here and there of some typhus corrosion, and just water down some riser rust, and kind of let that pull if we water it down a lot and we let it sort of seep into where it would go, it's going to naturally fall where the rust would drip anyway. And that's it, really. And the base is pretty simple as well. So for the base, it's already got some sand and stuff like that on it. I'm going to just add some crackle paint. Once I put the crackle paint on, I'm going to add a few of those dry pigments and let that crackle paint set, come back the next day potentially, and just seal it and add some grass and put a black rim on the base, and we are done. Now, if you want to do something a little bit different, why not use different washes? So here, like I said at the beginning, we're going to talk about what the green wash was used for. Here we go. Instead of using just the flesh wash and the agrax, here I've used the green wash and mixed it in with a little bit of that flesh wash. And look, we've got a completely different looking Plague Marine. We could use this for a different squad or whatever it is. Now, this sort of effect I've used for lots of things in the past, mainly chaos, but here's a Khorne Berserker that you can see if you look carefully. You can see sort of white speckling behind the red there. So this is a very, very versatile sort of technique, very easy, and to be honest, I think anyone could do it. Most of these paints can be found on Element Games by using my affiliate link, which I'm going to pop below. Get 10 to 25% off your usual hobby supplies, and by clicking on that link and using it helps the channel out a little bit as well. So if you like this video, if this has helped you out, if this has helped you, maybe just giving you some ideas of how to paint your Death Guard, let me know in the comments. Why not give it a like? Why not give it a subscribe? Why not check me out on Patreon? And why not check me out on Twitch? See you later, chaps. Ta-ta.